Almighty gods of luck and fate, hallowed be thy dice. Thy crits come, thy rolls be done, on table as it is in dungeon. Give us this day our daily 20, and forgive us our bad rolls, as we forgive those DMs who roll against us. Lead us not into natural ones, but deliver us from fudging, for thine is the table, the damage, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Dude, what are you doing? What? Nothing? Today we're talking about the wisdom-based classes in D&D. We're going to look at Clerics, Druids, and Monks to see how they've changed from the 2014 version to the 2024 version. If you've been following along with the series, you'll know that I already covered the Warriors, which was the Barbarians, Fighters, and Paladins, and the Scoundrels, which is the Bards, Rangers, and Rogues. I also did an initial flip-through where I covered all of my first impressions of the 2024 Handbook, so go check all those videos out if you haven't already seen them. Now, you may have realized I was supposed to release this video last week. But between being sick as a dog and then Florida being hit by a hurricane, that just was not in the cards for me, so please forgive me. Before we get started, a couple of things that I would like to cover because I want to continue being able to pay my bills. First up is going to be Patreon. If you want early access to my content or access to my suggestion box, go check that out. If you're interested in graphic design and social media marketing and a lot more, go check out my UPWORK. And if you're interested in playing D&D with me as your DM, potentially with these new 2024 rules, go check out startplaying.games. I have a few ongoing campaigns on there, as well as my fairy tale inspired one-shot, The Enchanted Forest. If D&D minis are more your thing, you might want to check out my Etsy. I have a bunch of pre-painted minis, as well as my custom mini painting services. So let's get into it. And first, let's pray that there's some good changes for Clerics. As usual, we'll start by looking at the proficiencies and starting equipment. And as far as proficiencies, it's all the same so far. For starting equipment, Clerics are now going to get a chain shirt, a shield, a mace, a holy symbol, a priest pack, and 7 gold, or 110 gold. At level 1, Clerics still are getting their spellcasting, and the spell slots and everything are still all the same. One change that they did do here is, like the Paladin, they've standardized how many spells you're going to be preparing for each level, rather than making you do a bunch of math. But let's look at the actual spell list. For cantrips, they've added Toll the Dead and Word of Radiance. For first and second level spells, everything is still the same. Until we get to third level spells, where they've added Aura of Vitality, and then for fourth level we have Aura of Life and Aura of Purity. For fifth level spells, they've added Circle of Power and Summon Celestial. For sixth level spells, they added Sunbeam. For seventh level spells, they added Power Word Fortify. For eighth level spells, they added Sunburst. And for ninth level spells, they added Power Word Heal. So there's a lot of new auras, a lot of new sun stuff, and a lot of new power words. Clerics don't choose their divine domain at level 1 anymore, which I don't think makes any fucking sense. I ranted all about that in my video on my thoughts on the 2024 book, because this also applies to a few other classes. I'm not a fan, but you can see all about it over there. So instead, at level 1, Clerics now get Divine Order. They can choose between one of two features: Protector, which is going to give you proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor, or Thaumaturge, which gives you an extra cleric cantrip and a boost to your Arcana and Religion. So this kind of reins Clerics into being either warrior-focused or magic-focused. And I think that's a good change, because before this was more dependent on your subclass. At level 2, Clerics get Channel Divinity, and like they've done with some other classes' features, they've made Channel Divinity a little more integral to the class. Which is good, because is it just me, or did nobody use Channel Divinity before? You now also get 1 extra use of your Channel Divinity. You used to get 1 use of it at level 2, 2 uses at level 6, and 3 at level 18. Now instead you get 2 at level 2, 3 at level 6, and 4 at level 18. And they've added that over here to the class chart. Also, like they've done with some other classes' features, you're now going to get 1 use back when you take a short rest, and all of your uses back when you take a long rest. For the Channel Divinity options, you used to get Turn Undead and 1 based on your subclass. But now you don't have a subclass at level 2. So instead they give you Divine Spark, which is either going to let you heal an ally or deal damage to an enemy, your choice. As for Turn Undead, they've updated the terminology a little bit. Instead of being turned, which is basically the same as being frightened, they're now just frightened. They've simplified the text a lot, but the one actual change that I'm seeing is that they no longer need to see or hear you. It just says undead within 30 feet. The 2024 version also adds magic actions, so now Channel Divinity is part of that. Clerics now get their subclass at level 3. I'm still bitter. At level 5, Clerics used to get Destroy Undead, now they get Sear Undead instead. So rather than just destroying certain undead who fail their saving throw, Seer Undead is going to add damage to the turned undead. At 7th level, there's a new feature called Blessed Strikes, and it's going to be pretty similar to the Divine Order thing that we talked about earlier, where you can basically choose one that's more warrior-based and one that's more magic-based. You can pick whichever one. The first option is Divine Strike, which lets you add necrotic or radiant damage, your choice, when you attack with a weapon. The other one, Potent Spellcasting, is going to let you add your Wisdom modifier to the damage that you deal with any cleric cantrip. At level 10, clerics still get Divine Intervention, but it's a completely different thing. You used to roll a percentile, and if it succeeds, your DM decides how your god intervenes. And I think that this is one of the things where too many DMs were dicks about it, so they just changed it. So now, as a magic action, you can choose a cleric spell of 5th level or lower that doesn't require a reaction to cast. As a part of the same action, you can cast the spell without expending a spell slot or needing material components. And you can do this once per long rest. The problem is, by the time you get this feature at level 10, you already have 2 level 5 spell slots. So it's basically just an extra spell slot that you don't need to have the spell prepared for. It's just not that exciting to me. I mean, I think if Cleric got this feature at like level 5, it might be awesome. Because then you're calling upon your god to do magic that you can't actually do. But that's not the case here. At level 14, you get Improved Blessed Strikes, which is going to make whichever option more powerful that you chose at level 7. Naturally, Clerics get their Epic Boon at level 19, and the option that they recommend is the Boon of Fate. And then at level 20, Clerics are going to get Greater Divine Intervention. Clerics used to get an improvement to their Divine Intervention, which made it always succeed. Now, instead, it allows them to cast Wish whenever they use Divine Intervention. And this actually is kind of cool, especially given that Clerics don't normally get Wish as a spell option. So that's it for Clerics. Let's turn over a new leaf while we look at Druids. Druidic proficiencies seem to have changed a lot. For armor, Clerics used to get light armor, medium armor, and shields, and they couldn't use any that were made of metal. Now, instead, they just get light armor and shields. While I do think that not using metal armor and weapons was a weird restriction, I kinda miss it now that it's gone. It was kind of evocative of the Druid. You only use like fur armor or things like that. And it definitely simplified the weapons because Druids used to get clubs, daggers, darts, javelins, maces, quarterstaffs, scimitars, sickles, slings, and spears, and now they just get simple weapons. They also still start with their herbalism kit, and all of the skill options are still the same. For starting equipment, Druids are going to have leather armor, a shield, a sickle, a druidic focus, and they recommend a quarterstaff, an explorer's pack, an herbalism kit, and 9 gold, or 50 gold. And 50 is kind of a low number compared to some of the other classes. But let's get into the spell list because they added a lot for Druids. A lot of these I recognize as being from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but some of them are new. For cantrips, they added Elementalism, Message, Spare the Dying, Starry Wisp, and Thunderclap, so a lot of new options there. For first level spells, they added Ice Knife from Xanathar's Guide, and Protection from Evil and Good. For second level spells, they've added Aid, Augury, Continual Flame, Enlarge Reduce, and Summon Beast. For third level spells, they've added Aura of Vitality, Elemental Weapon, Revivify, and Summon Fae. For 4th level spells, they added Charm Monster, Divination, Fire Shield, Font of Moonlight, and Summon Elemental. For 5th level spells, they just added Cone of Cold. For 6th level spells, they added Flesh to Stone. For 7th level spells, they added Symbol. For 8th level spells, they added Incendiary Cloud. And then in the 2024 version in general, they replaced Feeble Mind with Befuddlement. And then for 9th level spells, everything's the same. That was a lot. And then like with other classes, they've standardized the amount of spells that you can prepare, and the spell slots are still all the same. So let's talk Druid features. You still get Druidic at level 1. Interestingly, they've changed it so that you need a successful investigation check to find it, rather than perception. At level 2, you're still going to get your Wild Shape, and if you've already seen my video on the 2024 Handbook, you will be familiar with the pretty big change that they made here. One is that you used to not be able to transform into an animal with a swim speed until level 4. That restriction is gone. You also are now going to choose a certain number of forms that you can turn into. As I talked about in the other video, while this is a new restriction, I think it makes it easier for Druids to know what the options are for what they can turn into. Sometimes less is more. Another change that I didn't notice when I did my flip-through video of the 2024 Handbook is that you used to take on the hit points of the animal that you turned into. So for example, I'm a Druid with 100 hit points, I turn into a spider, I now have 1 hit point. If that 1 hit point is taken, I go back to being a Druid with 100 hit points. That's gone now. In the new version, you're just a spider with 100 hit points. You keep your hit points and you stay in animal form unless you die. And if you die in animal form, you're dead. Your hit points are totally unaffected by wild shaping in the new version. This is one of the things that was sort of overpowered about Druids before, because theoretically you just have all these extra hit points, but not anymore. Additionally, at level 2 you get Wild Companion, which is going to let you cast Find Familiar using either a spell slot or a use of your Wild Shape. The problem is, the Familiar only lasts until you take a long rest. This is a really frustrating limitation, because it means that if you want a Familiar, you have to use up your resources every single day, whereas somebody like a Wizard would just permanently have a Familiar unless they died. For that reason, if I was playing a Druid using these rules, I would probably never summon my Familiar. It's just such a bullshit limitation, and there's no reason for it. Druids naturally get their subclass at level 3 now instead of at level 2, and we'll talk about those subclasses in a later video. At level 5 there's a new ability called Wild Resurgence. Once on each of your turns, if you have no uses of Wild Shape left, you can give yourself one use by expending a spell slot, no action required. And that last part, no action required, means that you could be doing this all the time, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of limit. There's also a second paragraph that says, in addition, you can expend one use of Wild Shape, no action required, to give yourself a level 1 spell slot, but you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Part of me wonders if their intention was that until you finish a long rest covered the whole thing, but that's not how they wrote it. There's another new feature at level 7 called Elemental Fury, which is going to give you one of two options. One is Potent Spellcasting, which lets you add your Wisdom modifier to the damage that you deal with Druid cantrips. Option 2 is Primal Strike. Once on each of your turns, when you hit with either a weapon or your beast form's attack, you can add cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. Like the Cleric, I feel like this is giving you two options so that you can go more warrior-based or more magic-based depending on what your preference is, which again, used to be more related to your subclass. At level 15 you get Improved Elemental Fury, which is going to boost whichever one of those options that you chose. This is seriously reminding me of the Cleric now. For those who chose Potent Spellcasting, when you cast a Druid cantrip with a range of 10 feet or greater, the spell's range increases to 300 feet. For those who chose Primal Strike, that 1d8 damage is now going to be 2d8. At level 18, Timeless Body is gone, but we're going to circle back to that. And then you do still get Beast spells at level 18. Beast spells allows you to cast spells while you're Wild Shape, but they've improved it. It used to not allow any spells that require material components. It now allows for spells that require material components as long as they don't cost gold or consume material ingredients. Druids get their Epic Boon at level 19, no surprise there, and their recommended option is the Boon of Dimensional Travel. And at level 20, you still get Archdruid, but they've changed it a lot. Unfortunately, you no longer get unlimited Wild Shapes, which kinda sucks, but you get 3 things instead. You get Evergreen Wild Shape, so whenever you roll initiative and you have no uses of Wild Shape left, you regain 1 expended use of it. But compared to unlimited Wild Shapes, that kinda sucks. Nature Magician basically allows you to convert uses of your Wild Shape into higher level spell slots. And 3, you remember how I said Timeless Body is gone? They've now made it Longevity, and it's just part of the Archdruid feature. And that's it for Druids. So let's kick off this last section and take a look at Monks. For proficiencies, rather than having simple weapons and short swords, you now get simple weapons and martial weapons that have a light property. Still no armor, but you still get either an artisan's tool or a musical instrument of your choice. The skills are still all the same, and for starting equipment you get a spear, 5 daggers, whatever artisan's tool or musical instrument you chose to have proficiency in, an explorer's pack and 11 gold, or 50 gold, same as the druid. Moving on to martial arts, they've now redefined monk weapons to be simple weapons or martial weapons with the light property, same as your proficiencies, and they've added a few features to martial arts too. First of all, you can now just make an unarmed strike as a bonus action. And for your martial arts die, you get a d6. Compare this to the 2014 version when you used to get a d4 at level 1 for martial arts. Let me tell you, players hate rolling these fucking things for damage, because none of the numbers on it are that exciting. Ooh, a 4. Yay. Unarmored defense is still exactly the same. Instead of key, monks now get Monk's Focus. And instead of key points, they get focus points. It's the same thing, they just fucking renamed it. And why? Do people not know what ki is? I mean, it's the same thing as chi, basically. Do people not know what chi is? But aside from the completely unnecessary change that takes flavor out of the class, you still get the same number of points, and Flurry of Blows is still the same. Patient Defense used to let you spend 1 key point to take the dodge action as a bonus action. Now you can just disengage as a bonus action, or alternatively, spend 1 focus point to take both the disengage and dodge actions as a bonus action. Step of the Wind used to let you spend 1 key point to take either the dash or disengage action as a bonus action, and your jump distance would be doubled. Does anybody know how jump distances work in D&D? Anybody? Hello? With the new Step of the Wind, you can take the dash action as a bonus action, or alternatively, spend one focus point to take both the disengage and dash actions as a bonus action, and your jump distance is doubled. So to kind of simplify, monks can dash or disengage as a bonus action without spending anything, which I kind of feel like steps on the toes of the rogue a little bit, or whatever. Or they can spend a focus point to either disengage and dodge, or disengage and dash. I feel like there was a lot simpler way for them to put it, but okay. But in addition to the monk's focus and unarmored movement, they're also getting a new ability called Uncanny Metabolism. When they roll initiative, they're going to regain all of their uses of their focus points, and they're going to regain hit points equal to their martial arts die plus their monk level. And once they use this, they can't use it again until they take a long rest. That's going to matter later. At level 3, rather than having deflect missiles, they now have deflect attacks. It's the same except for two major differences. First, this now applies to melee attacks in addition to ranged attacks. The other big change is that they have to make a dexterity saving throw or take damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die plus your dexterity modifier. These two things mean it could be doing a lot more damage and you could be doing it a lot more often. At level 4, slow fall still works the same way, and at level 5 you still get your extra attack. At level 5 you still get stunning strike, which works mostly the same but with one added benefit. In the old version, if the target succeeds on their constitution saving throw, nothing happens. But in the new version, if they succeed, the target's speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against the target before then has advantage. So that's pretty cool. Even if you don't stun them, it still does something. Because players tend to hate when they try to do something and it fails, and then they're like, okay, well that's my whole turn right there. Rather than key empowered strikes at level 6, which makes your unarmed attacks count as magical attacks, you instead just get empowered strikes, which makes them deal force damage. Same thing basically, except for some reason we don't say key anymore, and I guess this could be helpful against, like, werewolves or things that require silvered weapons, because now you're dealing force damage, rather than, like, bludgeoning damage that counts as magical. At level 7, evasion is still the same, except they specify that you can't be incapacitated. From this point on, things look really different for the monk. Stillness of mind at level 7 has been removed, but they added a new feature at level 9 called acrobatic movement. This means that you can move across vertical surfaces or across liquids on your turn without falling, as long as you aren't wearing armor or wielding a shield, which you don't have proficiency in anyways. I'm not gonna lie, this one's really cool. It just, feels like such a monk thing to, run across a wall. Purity of body at level 10 has also been removed. Instead, they added self-restoration, which allows you to remove the charmed, frightened, or poison effects at the end of each of your turns. You also don't gain levels of exhaustion from not eating or drinking. At level 10, there's also a new ability called Heightened Focus, which is going to expand on the 3 Monk's Focus options that you got earlier. So Flurry of Blows now has 3 attacks instead of 2, Patient Defense now gives you temporary hit points, and Step of the Wind lets you take a willing creature who's large or smaller along with you as you run away. At level 13, Tongue of the Sun and Moon is gone, and instead you get Deflect Energy, and this is basically just going to let you use your Deflect Attacks feature to deflect things other than weapon attacks. And given that there's not really a limit to deflect attacks, this could be really overpowered. I'll have to see it in play, but you can just deflect attacks all the time? Instead of Diamond Soul at level 14, you get Disciplined Survivor, which is the same fucking thing. At level 15, Timeless Body is gone, and instead you get Perfect Focus. What this does is that if you roll initiative and you don't use that Uncanny Metabolism feature that we mentioned earlier, you regain expended focus points until you have 4 if you have less than that. And at this point, you have 15 focus points maximum. So this is really going to come in handy when you've already used your Uncanny Metabolism, you've used all your focus points, you have been at it for, I guess, all day. Girl, just take a long rest. At level 18, rather than Empty Body, you get Superior Defense. The only part that they kept is that while you are using this feature, you have resistance to all damage except force damage. Instead of 4 key points, this is now going to cost you 3 focus points, you don't turn invisible, and you can't cast Astral Projection. It's a fraction of the effect for a fraction of the cost. Like everybody else, monks get their epic boon at level 19, and their recommended option is the Boon of Irresistible Offense. And for the final feature that monks get at level 20, Perfect Self is gone, and now instead you get Body and Mind. This is going to increase your dexterity and wisdom scores by 4 to a maximum of 25. And that's it for those 3 classes. And you may have already guessed what we're covering next week. But for those of you that didn't already guess, we're going to be covering the mages. This is going to be sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. And that'll wrap up us talking about all 12 classes, and then we can move on to subclasses. So subscribe if you're excited to see any of that. And what do you think? Will you be playing a wisdom-based class in the new 2024 version? And do you have any questions about the new rules? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next week. Bye! Step of the Wind used to let you spend 1 key point to take Jesus fucking Christ. Step of the Wind, Jesus fuck.